Hello friends, as part of this live session, I am going to review the SQL assessments. Eventually, we'll also see the details related to Python. As of now, some of the students who are part of the live training or guided program actually have gone through SQL assessments as well as Python assessments. I just want to give my expert review with respect to the solutions related to those assessments. So that being said, when it comes to SQL assessments, we have around 8 or 9 scenarios. I do not remember on top of my head. I will go through most of the scenarios and try to give my expert review. So let me log in as one of the user who took the assessment, and then I'll take it further. I'm getting the password of the user. Let me paste the password here. Now I am logging in as that user. So with respect to our training program, we actually take care of the assessments as part of the material. So we'll provide assessments like this. And here are the SQL assessments. The first one is primarily to set up database variables so that people can connect to the database. The second one is primarily to validate DB connectivity. If you look at the validate DB connectivity, it is actually trying to set the required variables, and it will just validate whether we are able to connect to database using that information or not. First, let me restart and clear all outputs. And then let me run all the cells in this notebook, which will make sure that whether the user who are trying to take the assessment have required lab access or not. So we provide the required databases to take the assessments. The user is supposed to use those databases and take care of the assessments. They just have to come up with the solutions based upon the problem statements. That being said, the first statement is create table for courses. It sounds very simple. However, there are a few things which you need to understand before coming to the solution. So here we have given the details about how the courses table should be structured. It should have 5 columns: course ID, course name, course author, course status, course published date. And even though it's a very simple DDL based assessment, it covers quite a lot of features we typically use while creating the tables. For example, we want course ID to be sequence generated integer, and also it is supposed to be primary key. Primary key is nothing but it is not null and also unique. So it has to be a unique and not null column. Along with it also supposed to generate using sequence. When columns are populated using sequence generated numbers, those columns are also called as surrogate columns. If there is a key enforced on it, we also call it as surrogate key. So course ID is supposed to be surrogate key, where the values are supposed to be populated using sequence generated numbers. And then when it comes to course name, it has to hold both alphabets as well as numbers, and hence we have to use the appropriate data type, and also we need to specify the size. Before getting into the details, let me clear all the outputs here, and also let me close all of the tabs, and then let's go through the rest of the columns. Course author also similar to course name. However, the size of course author is supposed to be only 40 characters, the maximum size. When it comes to course status, it is supposed to hold only these values, which means we need to define a special constraint called as check constraint. So here it is primary key constraint, here it is check constraint. When it comes to course published date, it should hold date type value. So we need to have 5 columns, one with primary key, one with check constraint, and then you also need to make sure that the data types are correct. So even though it is a very simple problem statement to create a very simple table, it covers quite a lot of features related to DDL statements which are used to create tables. Now let me run this. It will take care of setting required environment variables or required variables which will facilitate us to connect to database. Let me run this. Here, this will actually be used by Jupyter Notebook to actually connect to the database. Now let's run this. In this case, I'm just dropping the table. Now this is the solution came up by the user, and you can see that he actually satisfied almost all the requirements related to problem statement, which is correct. So course ID is supposed to be a primary key, and it is supposed to be sequence generated number. When it comes to Postgres, you can use a keyword called as serial, and you should be able to define a column using a serial type, which means internally it will create a sequence, and course ID will be populated using that sequence generated numbers. When it comes to course name, course author, and course status, they are supposed to be of type varchar, and the maximum size for course name is 60 characters, and hence it is 60. However, there is some misreading of the requirements. You can see that course author is supposed to hold up to 40 characters. However, here it is defined as 30. And also when it comes to course status, the way the course status field is supposed to be defined is one need to pick the largest word, whatever is the size of it, we should only define that size. So in this case, published is the largest word of the three. It is only 9 characters, and hence ideally the course status should be defined as varchar of 9. Course published date is correct. It is a date, and the table is created as per the expectations. So most of the freshers who are actually watching this, even the laterals, you will get similar problem statements when you go to some of the interviews of good companies. And even though the create table statement is correct up to 90% or 95%, still there might be test cases which might be executed automatically by those engines which will actually take the test. And this create table statement, when they actually test using test cases automatically, there is a possibility that it might fail the test cases, and even though you are right up to 95%, you might get 0 marks. So you have to be extremely careful. You have to focus on the reading the requirements, and you have to define everything as per the requirements. So attention to detail is very, very important. But if I am the interviewer, and if I am taking the test, if I am reviewing manually like this, I will give 90% for this question. If it is a 10 marks question, I will give 9 marks or 8 marks to this. That being said, we can also get the details about the metadata related to courses table by running this. Okay, I haven't run this. Let me run this first, and then run this. You can actually see the courses table details, and you can see the details about how course ID is being populated. It is using a sequence which is created automatically when we create the table with column as serial and primary key. Okay, this is about first problem statement, which is nothing but to create a simple table for courses dataset. That being said, now let's go to the next question, which is nothing but inserting courses into table. In this problem statement, we have provided required dataset in a simple Excel type table. The expectation is to get a insert statement which can be used to populate all the records into a table. Also, it says that insert data into courses using the data provided. So we have to use this data, and we have to populate the table. We need to make sure ID is system generated, and also we need to use the table that is created as part of the previous exercise. So unless and until you complete the previous exercise, you will not be able to run this successfully. Even though whoever took this exam have some issues related to defining the tables, as the column lengths for both course author and course status is greater than whatever we need, he should be able to come up with insert statement, and he should be able to populate this data into the database table. Now let's run this once again. Let's run this. Let's make sure that we have table by name courses in the database. You can see that this user have a table called as courses, which means we should be able to go into the details about coming up with the insert statement to populate the database table with the data which is provided. Now, even though this problem, the solution for this problem statement is correct, I don't see any issues with respect to syntax or the way it is developed. But when it comes to coding, we need to follow certain best practices. Otherwise, it will be a bit tough to manage our code. So in this case, when we define the column names, typically all the column names should be completely in lowercase. Okay, I will not be cutting down marks for this, but as per the best practice, when we specify the column names, they are supposed to be lowercase. In most of the cases, the organizations will decide certain best practices. The table names and column names will be typically in lowercase. The keywords which are typically comes as part of syntax of underlying database technologies will be typically uppercase. So in this case, insert is a keyword, into is a keyword, and values is a keyword. These should be in uppercase. And the table name, column names should all be lowercase. And that is the common practice which most of the companies follow. Some companies actually even use column names as well as table names in uppercase. It all depends upon the company in which you are working. You need to follow certain standards which are set by the architecture team. Now, with respect to inserting into the table, the logic is apt. Instead of having 10 different insert statements to insert 10 records, if you have 10 records, we can actually insert all the records at once. This is called as batch insert, and this is how you should be able to populate the data into the table if you have to populate many records at once. Apart from that, everything looks good. It should work as expected. Now let me run this to see if data will be populated into the table or not. One more gap with respect to best practices is nothing but typically after every punctuation mark, we should have space. In this case, after comma, we should have space. If you use IDEs such as SQL Workbench or any other IDE, there should be a way where you can actually reformat the commands by just right-clicking and by clicking on reformat option. And that's how you should be able to follow the standards using the features provided by IDEs. So this is how ideally the insert statement should be. He just have to reformat. Apart from that, the query is right. And even if there are test cases which covers edge case scenarios, depending upon the problem statement, it will pass. So he will get 100 out of 100 for this problem statement, or 100% marks for this problem statement. Also, we have provided the steps to validate the queries. Let me run this. We should be able to get 12 records. You can see we are seeing 12 records. We can also preview the data to make sure that the data is as per our expectations. You can see here, everything is as per our expectations. So the solution the exam taker come up with is apt for this problem statement. That being said, let me save it. And now let me go to the next problem statement, which is nothing but getting published courses. Now let's go to the problem statement. Let us run queries on course data that is inserted into the table. As part of the previous topic, we should have inserted this data using the below data, get the list of courses published on September 2020 30th. So date is 30th, month is September, year is 2020. So if you look at the data, we have two records which fall in that category. One is this one and second is this one. We just have to come up with a simple query with where condition. That's it. It's a very simple query. It's not a very complicated one. In this, we are just testing whether you will be able to come up with solution using where condition or not. That being said, before validating, let me restart and clear all outputs. Let me run this. Let me run this. Let me run this. You can see the data here. This is the original data which the data is populated using the insert statement developed. And then provide the query which will get the list of courses published on 2020 September 30th. So in this case, even though we have two records with 2020 September 30th, we are supposed to return only one because one of them is in inactive state and only one is actually in published state, and hence we should only get this record, nothing else. So this is primarily to compare with the date along with status. So in this case, it is completely incorrect. There is no condition related to course status equal to published. That's why the user will get actually, if it is automated, the user might fail all the test cases, and his answer might be marked as incorrect. So you guys have to be extremely careful when it comes to a comparison. Even though this where condition is correct, let me run this and see how what it will actually return. See here, even though I have provided the expected output, the user could not actually compare the output with the expected output. So this is so there are a couple of issues. One, the user did not go through the details with respect to validation steps, and also he did not understand the requirement clearly. So you need to really understand the requirement before coming up with the solution. This is how the requirements will be. The business analyst will not give you the exact logic. They will not say that, okay, compare compare course status with published and compare course published date with appropriate date. That is not how they will give. They will just say something like this. This is how the business requirements will be. Get the list of courses published on 2020 September 30th, and you should understand it properly, and then you have to come up with the solution. I know that people tend to rush and they might misinterpret the problem statement. Even I did that. If you follow the explanation in the beginning, I mentioned that it should return this one as well as this one. Then I have realized that we are only looking for published, and I have course corrected, right? To make sure that at the time of validation you actually get the expected results, I actually gave these validation steps. You should have gone through these validation steps. If you have gone through these validation steps, then you should have came up with appropriate solution in this case. Now, when it comes to course published date, we can also directly compare like this. You don't need to use toChar and all those things. If you start using functions like toChar on top of columns, if we have too much of data in the table, and if this is a very common type of query, even if the column is indexed, it will actually use full index scan when you use functions like this on the columns. So you should avoid using functions on columns that are part of where condition. So in this case, you just have to clean up like this. Let me delete. You have to be extremely careful in using appropriate functions for the problem statement. So first, the solution is not correct. Second, even if you have that end condition to check for published, there might be some performance issues, and the queries might run very slow if you have too much of data in the courses table. So in this case, we just have to say 2020 -09-30. First, let's run this to see if you are able to get the data as per our expectations. You can see that even without that toChar function, I'm able to get the results. On top of it, I also need to get only published data, and hence I have to say and course status equal to published. This is the correct solution for the problem. Okay, even if you have toChar condition, it might pass the test scenarios. However, the performance might be very slow. So when it comes to the actual projects, you have to be extremely careful about what functions should be used depending upon the problem statement. First of all, if you can come up with a solution without using any functions on top of columns, you should make sure that you use that approach compared to using functions. Okay, just don't use functions randomly or without going through the process of exploring all the options and then getting into the solution. Let me reiterate. When it comes to where condition, especially if you have equal condition, make sure to avoid using functions on the columns as much as you can. If you can come up with the solution without using functions, you have to give priority to that over the solutions which uses functions. In most of the cases, when we have requirements like this, the date columns will be indexed, and if you use functions on top of those date columns, instead of using index range scan or index unique scan, it will end up using something called as full index scan, which is a lot more expensive compared to index unique scan or index range scan. So in this case, course published date is not unique, and hence it will use something called as index range scan. If you use equal condition like this, if you use function on top of it, if course published date is indexed, then it will actually use index full scan. Okay, so keep it in mind. Always use always come up with the solutions, or always try to come up with the solutions without using functions on the columns. Now let's go to the next problem statement, which is nothing but getting count by status. So in this case, this problem statement is related to using group by and getting the count by each status. Let's go to the problem statement, and then we'll actually go through the solution the user came up with. So for the first question, the user is almost there. For the second question, he is there. He came up with the right solution. For the third question, which is nothing but getting published courses, he made a mistake, so 0 marks. So let's assume we have 10 marks for each of the questions. He will get 10 for this, 9 for this, 10 for this, 0 for this. So for now, out of 30, he will get 19 marks. Okay, now let's go to this. The problem statement says, let us run queries on course data that is inserted into the table. As part of the prior topics, we should have inserted this data. Using the below data, get the count of courses by status. Also make sure data is sorted in descending order by course status. So there are two things here. One is using group by and then getting the count. Second one is sorting data in descending order by course status. Now let's scroll down and look at the solution. Let me run this to create the required variables. And then let me run these two cells, which actually take care of whatever is required to connect to the database. Let's review the data quickly. You can see that we have 12 records. Now you can actually even see the desired output here. So the data is supposed to be sorted in descending order by course status. You can see that the data is sorted in descending order by course status. And then when it comes to course count, for published it is 6, for inactive it is 3, for draft it is 3. Now let's scroll down here and look at the solution. The solution is right. So he will get 100% marks for this. So out of 40, as of now, he will get 29 marks. One of the key thing is when it comes to sorting the data, as we are expecting data to be sorted in descending order by course status, we have to use this DESC. Okay, so now that being said, let's go to the next one. Next one is primarily a task. It is not an exercise, it is task to set up the HRDB database. We have the files already in this location. You just have to run these cells and you should be able to get data into the tables. What I can do is I can just say kernel, restart kernel and run all cells. It will take care of the dropping the tables if they already exist. And then it will create the tables, and also it will actually load the data into the tables. You can see that everything have ran successfully. We can also preview the data here. When it comes to departments, we have 27 rows. When it comes to employees, we have 107 rows, but we are only previewing 10 of them. You can also get distinct department IDs, and I'm inserting one additional record into employees with employee ID 2000 and department ID as null. And also we are inserting one record into departments table with a department ID as 300. I don't know why I have all these things. So don't worry too much about these. In this case, we are just setting up the data into these two tables. I'm not sure why I have this, but don't worry too much. The exercises which are following this task will not be affected because of these errors. Now let's go to the exercise. So far we have gone through 4 problem statements, and the user or the exam taker got 29 out of 40. Now we have 3 more. The next one is this one, get employee count by department. Let me restart the kernel and clear all outputs. Now let's go to the problem statement first. It says, let us get count of employees by department using tables set up as part of HR database. You can review the table structures of employees and departments by going to this task. If you cannot find one, please reach out to support staff. After validating connectivity and data in the tables, come up with a query which will get us the employee count by department. In this case, we want to get employee count by department. Output should contain department name and count. You need to figure out the field on which join should be performed. So this is nothing but join plus group by. Earlier problem statement using courses data is only using group by. In this case, we have two tables, employees and departments. You can actually go here and you can review. You can see that we have both employees as well as departments table. They also have the data. In this case, departments is parent table and employees is child table. It have one-to-many relationship between departments and employees. Now let's go through the solution that is come up by the exam taker, and I will give you the feedback whether he is able to come up with the appropriate solution or not. Let me run these cells to connect to the database and preview the data. You can see the data for both the departments as well as employees. Now I have even given the expected output. We need to come up with the query to get the employee count by department below. Make sure data is sorted in ascending order by department name. Also, the column names as part of the output should be department name and employee count. Actually, it is supposed to be employee count, not the department count. There's a typo in this. Now you can actually see the employee count in each of the departments, and this is the expected output. Now, this is the solution came up by the user. Let's run this and compare. It seems he came up with the right solution. You can see here, everything is matching. And hence, I'll be giving 10 marks out of 10 for this problem statement. We just need to make sure that employees and departments are joined using appropriate columns, which are nothing but department ID from departments and department ID from employees. And then we have to group by department name and order by department name. So in this case, the only thing is he did not follow some best practices. There should be a space after comma here. Except that everything looks good. Also, it is a good practice to actually specify the alias wherever we are referring any columns. Even if you do not follow, it is fine, but it is a good practice. But this is supposed to be followed in most of the cases. We should write our code appropriately. Once again, I'm reiterating, as part of IDEs, you will have the features of enforcing the best practices. You can just leverage those things and you can take care of this. However, the exam taker will get 10 out of 10. Even if there are some edge case scenarios, it will pass all the test cases if this problem statement is given in interviews and if the query is tested using automated process. Now let's go to the next problem statement. This is improvisation on top of the previous problem. Let me clear all outputs here. In this case, it is almost same, but we are only interested in those departments which have employees more than 10. And that is what dense means. So in this case, we are trying to get high dense departments. Here, the requirements are the requirement is explained a bit in detail. After validating connectivity and data in the tables, come up with a query which will get us the departments with employee count greater than 10. It is greater than, not greater than, and equal to. So you need to make sure that you understand the problem statement. If you do not understand the problem statement and if you come up with greater than or equal to rather than greater than, even though the desired output doesn't show any records with exact 10 count, when it comes to automated testing process, the logic might fail the validation using those edge case scenarios, and hence you might fail the test that is conducted for the interview process. In this case, I'm not worried too much about it, but if you use greater than or equal to, definitely I will cut some marks for this problem statement. Let me run this. Let me validate the data. Everything looks good. Now, when it comes to solution, see here, he actually said greater than or equal to, which means I will only give 5 marks out of 10. Okay, you have to be extremely careful with respect to the requirements, or probably 6 out of 10. I will not be giving 8 or 9 for this. Okay, so you have to be very careful reading the requirements. Once again, I'm reiterating, and actually I will only give 2 or 3 marks for this. I will explain why I am going to give only 2 or 3 marks. There are beyond this, there is another major issue. You should not be using a query like this when it comes to SQL. There is something called as having clause after group by. If you have to perform any filtering on top of aggregated results, when you actually group the data using group by, you have to use that having clause, and you can actually come up with a much better solution than this. This have a couple of issues. The query is more complicated, and also it will definitely run into performance issues if we have quite a lot of data in employees as well as department tables, or even if there is quite a lot of data in employees, it might perform very poorly. That being said, now let me give you the appropriate solution for this problem statement. I have copied and pasted here. All I need to do is I can delete this and then delete this. Okay. Having works only on top of group by. So I just have to say having count of star greater than 10. Even if you come up with a solution like this, if you say greater than or equal to, I will cut at least 4 or 5 marks for the solution. Again, if it is validated using automated process, you will get 0 marks. That being said, now let's run this, and you can actually see the results as per our expectations. Also, I might have asked to actually sort the data. Let's see. Yeah, it is also asking to make sure data is sorted in descending order by department count. All I need to do is I can say order by department count, DESC. This is the appropriate solution for this problem statement. Okay. So you should be familiar with having. I think you are not very comfortable with having. Now, if you look at the code, it is a lot more simpler and readable. And also when it comes to performance, it performs a lot better than this if the data volume as part of employees is big. That being said, having is typically used to filter using aggregate functions after grouping on specific columns. So in this case, I'm grouping by department name, and then I'm trying to filter on count, and hence we should be using having. And the classic example is, let's say I want to group the employees by department and get only those employees or get the sum of all the employee salaries, and I want to get only those department details whose salary expense is 100,000. Whose salary expense is greater than 100,000. In that case also, you can actually group the data using department name, and then you can say having sum of salary greater than 100,000, and that's how you should be able to filter the data on aggregated results using group by. You should not be nesting the query like this and come up with logic like this. Even though it is functionally correct, it is overly complicated, and also the performance of this query will be very poor. Okay. Now, that being said, let's go to the last problem statement. This is the most complex one also. If I give 10 marks to each of these problem statements, I will give 25 marks for this problem statement, which is nothing but get highly paid employees. Now let's go through the problem statement here. Most of the stuff is same as the last two problem statements. However, in this case, we want to see department ID, employee ID, first name, last name, and salary as part of the output. And also, I might have given a bit more details down the line. Let me first clear this. Then let me run this. Now provide the query to get the highest paid employee details from each department. Make sure data is sorted in ascending order by department name and then in ascending order by employee ID. And the expected output is this one. So for each department, I want to get the highest paid employees. And the data should be sorted in ascending order by department name. there might be a possibility that more than one employee might get highest salary. If that is the case, we want to sort the data by department name first and then employee ID. So that's what the problem statement say. We are just trying to get the highest paid employees in each department. Now, when it comes to solution, this is overly complicated solution. You should not be using this approach, even though it is possible to get the solution. You have to use analytic functions. I think you might not have gone through the material related to analytic functions. Let me actually review the material once to see if I have material related to analytic functions or not. You see here, there is a module called as writing advanced SQL queries. You have to go through this to come up with the solution. In this case, you haven't come up with the solution using analytic functions. And hence, even if your even if your solution for the problem statement is correct, I'll only give probably 50 or 60% marks, not 90 or 100% marks. That being said, what is the solution for this? The solution is nothing but this one. Okay, so first I have to get I have to so I don't have to aggregate using group by. I can directly get into the solution like this. So I can pick all this, I can copy paste. Okay, let me format this little bit so that we follow the common best practices. On top of department name, department ID, employee ID, first name, last name, salary, I also want to get the maximum salary for each department. For that, what you can do is you can say m dot, actually it is supposed to be D here, department ID, and it is supposed to be E here. So department name, department ID, employee ID from employees, first name, last name, and salary from employees. Then I have to say max of E dot salary. Then I have to use a special clause called as over, and then I have to use partition by like this. Now I have to specify the department ID. So let me specify the department ID, and then I have to specify order by. I have to sort the data in descending order by salary. That way we'll be able to get the maximum salary for each department along with the other data such as the department name, department ID, employee ID, first name, last name, and salary. So I have to say order by, and then I have to use E dot salary. Then I have to say DESC to sort the data in descending order within each group where the data is grouped by or partitioned by department ID. Now let's review the output by running the query without getting into the details of just getting maximum salary. Then we will improvise on top of it. Now I have to specify the from clause. Let me actually say max salary as alias for this, max underscore salary. And now I can say from employees E join departments D on D dot department ID. Let me scroll down a little bit, equal to E dot department ID. Now I can run this. We can see that for each and every record, along with the salary, we are also getting maximum salary. For example, if you look at department ID 20, there are 2 records. The maximum salary is 13,000. We got the 13,000 here. Even for this record, along with the salary, we also got the maximum salary. Same is the case with department ID 30. The maximum salary within department ID 30 is nothing but 11,000. For all the records related to department ID 30, along with salary, we also got maximum salary, which is nothing but 11,000. Now comes department ID 40, there is only 1 record, and hence both are same. When it comes to department ID 50, the maximum salary is 8,200. For all the records related to department ID 50, we got 8,200 as part of maximum salary. Same is the case with other department IDs as well, such as 60. Now, what we are supposed to do, we have to apply additional condition saying salary equal to max salary. However, some of the people might attempt like this. They might say and e dot salary equal to max underscore salary. However, this will fail because the columns that are used as part of the select clause cannot be used as part of the where condition. When I say columns, I am talking about aliases. The aliases which are defined as part of select clause cannot be used where condition. It is because of the order of execution the queries will be executed. And the queries will be executed starting from clause and then join and then where condition if there is any where condition, and then group by having, then it will actually come to select. Because select will be executed after group by and having, if you have group by and having, whatever is there in the select, especially the derived columns, cannot be used in where clause. You can see here, it will just fail saying that max underscore salary is not available or it cannot find a column by name max underscore salary. So how to address this issue? You just have to delete this from here. Now you have to nest this query. Okay. Now I can say select star from. Okay. I can select this entire query, use circular brackets. Let me format this a little bit. Let me hit a tab here. Now I can say where salary equal to max underscore salary. And also let's sort the data by department name and then salary. That is what the problem statement says. Let's go to the details here once. It says sort the data in ascending order by department name and then in ascending order by employee ID. So I have to specify employee ID here, not the salary. Now we should be able to run this and we should be able to get the data as per our expectation. However, it is complaining, saying syntax is not correct. Yeah, here we need to specify the alias. As there is no alias for the query, it is failing. We can specify alias like this. Now we should be able to run this. Okay, here we should not be specifying the alias. Even if you want to specify the alias, we have to use q, not DRE. So let's say q dot employee ID and then q dot department name. Now we should be able to run this. You can see the expected output as expected output. For accounting department with the department ID 110, the maximum salary is 12,000. When it comes to department ID, department name administration, the highest salary is 4,400, so on and so forth. You can see and compare this with this. You should be seeing the same results. Let's see how many we got. We got 11 rows, and here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. In this case, we are also supposed to get the department where there is no department ID in departments table, but there is a record in employees. For this, you have to use outer join. So in this case, I just have to improvise on this query saying left outer join like this. So employees E, left outer join departments D. Now if I run this, I should be able to get the 12 rows and you can see all the 12 rows here. Okay. So this is how you should be able to get the results. In this case, we are supposed to get employee ID. So I have to, I need to make sure that I have employee ID. I don't need department name. So sorry, not department name. I don't need department ID. And hence I can remove department ID from here. And also we don't need max salary. We only need department name, employee ID, first name, last name, and salary. And hence we need to improvise here saying select department name, then employee ID, then first name, last name, and then salary. Now we should be able to run the query and we can see the results as per the expected results. This is how you can actually come up with the solution using something called as window functions or analytic functions. I think the exam taker is not clear on these things. He's supposed to go through writing advanced SQL queries to come up with the solution for this problem statement. Okay, so this is the review of all the scenarios, which covers most of the important concepts related to writing good quality SQL queries. Here we are also testing whether the assessment takers are actually understanding the problem statements before coming up with the solutions or not. If not, how to come up with appropriate solutions. Keep in mind that we are also providing validation steps. You should be going through those validation steps and make sure that the solutions are meeting whatever is expected as part of those validation steps. It is very, very important. Even as part of the projects also, when we actually get the requirements, in some cases, if business analyst is a good analyst, he will also give test data or expected output. You have to make sure you go through the requirement, understand the requirement, go through the data that is provided to you, go through the details related to expected output, and you have to make sure you come up with the solution which meets that expected output. It is very, very important to take care of that. Okay. So that being said, I will give 0 marks for the last problem statement. I'll probably, as he have attempted it, probably 5 marks out of 25, not more than that. Now, when it comes to all the problem statements, let's reiterate how many marks we can give it to him, and then I'll conclude the session after Q&A. When it comes to assessments, they are here. Now let me go here. The first one I gave 9, the second one 10, 19, the third one 10, 29, fourth one I think 0, yeah, 29 up to here. Then when it comes to count by status, I think he'll get 10 out of 10, so 39. Then when it comes to this one, getting employee count by department, let's see, 7. Everything looks good, if I'm not wrong. So I'll give 10 marks for this. So far 9, 10, 9, 10, 0, get count, so 19, 29, 39 so far. And then when it comes to this one, I will give only 2 or 3 marks because he came up to this point. So 41 out of 50, sorry, 41 out of 60. And then this one, he will get 5 marks out of 25. So out of 85 marks, he will get somewhere around 45 to 50 range. That's it. Okay. But if he actually go through the automated test engine, most likely he will fail the technical test unless and until he improves on the skills. Okay. That being said, now I'll open the forum for Q&A. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll conclude this session. I don't know why it is. Let me see. Yeah, now I can figure out where it is. Yeah. Anyone have any questions? Shravan, Diptamai, Sai Bharat. Do you guys have any questions with respect to the assessment? Okay, then I hope this will help you in improving wherever the gaps are. Make sure you focus on those things and try to address those, and then try to come up with the solutions. You can actually go through some online forums and start taking the SQL assessments, and you can make sure you improve your skills over a period of time. You have to go through as many problem statements as possible so that you not only get the required skills, but also focus on understanding the requirements and coming up with the solution based upon the requirements. If you do not practice, then definitely there will be gaps with respect to your interpretation related to the requirements, and it will waste a lot of valuable time for you and also for the projects. As a team, it can aggravate the issue when people are not very diligent with respect to reading the requirements and coming up with the solutions based upon the requirements. So you need to make sure you understand the problem statement, use the skills you have acquired, and come up with the solution. You might not be able to come up with the solution all the time. Just take the feedback and try to improvise over a period of time, and make sure you become a better professional as you go along as part of your career. Okay, that being said, thank you very much. I will share the link for this YouTube video as part of our Slack channel. You can always review this and understand whatever is explained if you could not get everything as part of this one session. That being said, let's catch up once again as part of reviewing the Python assessments. Those who have joined through YouTube, if you like the content of the session, please click on the like button. If you are not subscribed yet to the channel, feel free to subscribe to the channel. And also, if you are interested to sign up our courses, feel free to reach out to us. You can always get in touch with us by sending an email to training@itversity.com. We can onboard you as part of these training programs as well. For now, we have paused on guided programs, but we will be opening up the guided programs very soon. You will definitely love, and you will definitely pick all the key skills required to become a data engineer or a Python engineer, depending upon the program which you have enrolled for. That being said, thank you and see you soon. Bye.